Thanks for tuning in to the HR Uprising podcast. I'm your host, Lucinda. The HR Uprising is focused on helping forward-thinking people professionals deliver real lasting value in their organisations. I'm a chartered psychologist, speaker and trainer, and recently authored the best-selling business book, How to Be a Change Superhero. My day job is founder and CEO of software and training business Actus. This gives me the opportunity to work with other businesses like yours. We are focused on building a better workplace for people wherever they are located, with the help of our performance, learning and talent management software and our training and consultancy services. Every week on the podcast, I will be covering different topics and challenges, joined by relevant experts and real-life people professionals. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoy and get value from this week's episode. Hi there. I thought I'd just nip on and let you know that I'm excited to be back doing training delivery in 2024. It kind of came around organically as people reached out to me, some of which had listened to me on the podcast, and I realised how much I love it. So the sorts of training that I'm delivering in-house for clients, I deliver my Change Superhero programme, which just got rave reviews from a government organisation. I also do management and leadership training and specific topics under performance. I'm running sessions on that, which is really interesting because that seems to have changed since COVID, what underperformance looks like, and many managers are finding that challenging. So I've got a lovely blended course that I run there, and obviously other management and comms or facilitation I'm really happy to deliver in line with the requirements of your business. So if you'd like to work with me personally, I've got limited availability, but I do have availability, and I'm looking for clients that want to work with me during 2024. So do reach out if you want to discuss your requirements. Thank you. Hello and welcome to this week's HR Uprising podcast. And this week I'm talking to Jo Wright. She's a speaker, coach, best-selling author of a great titled book, I've got to be said, called No More Shit Managers. Shit Manager, 7 Steps to a Coaching Culture. We'll be exploring those 7 steps over the course of this conversation. She's also co-founder of the Coaching Culture business. Jo, do you want to tell us a bit about your background and how you got into this area?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Lucinda. So worked for many years in large corporates, always been a manager who coached, or at least I thought I was, but without knowing it was coaching, until I further and further along went through my career and I became a change manager on a huge transformation change program. And I recognized the thing that was different was coaching conversations. I'd always been that go-to person, that sort of internal mentor. Like I said, I didn't always realize it had the coaching badge. I recognized the first time where I really asked some great questions and everything changed. So many experiences like that. But my change manager role made me realize, hang on, there's something really powerful in this. People don't just change when you tell them to. And it was that made me go, I am fascinated. What's going on here? There's a psychology behind this. I need to know more. So I went off and did my coaching qualification after many months of umming and ahhing. And it was life-changing. And that is probably the most potted of histories. It's probably 20-something years of a career squashed into 2 minutes there. But then it was life-changing, and I was like, wow, if something so, and I'm going to use the word simple because it's not simple, but something so powerful can be life-changing, but something that's relatively accessible, actually, how can I get that out to the masses? Because when I'm coaching, I feel like I'm sprinkling fairy dust. And that didn't feel right. I also felt quite aggrieved that coaching seemed to be reserved for leaders and execs at the time, like some sort of a luxury item. I thought that was criminal. And there's many strange occurrences, but I ended up in business with my now business partner, the other co-founder of Coaching Culture. And we've just gone on and on and on. And it's led to me then wanting to go out more to do speaking, to really inspire people to think differently and through the power of coaching. So there's lots of stories behind there, but that's probably the shortest version of 30 years.
I'm sure someone will tap into it. And I know from there's a few funny stories in the book, aren't there? It's interesting your point about something so simple. It reminds me of the adage about the 7 Habits, where they talk about it's common sense, but common sense isn't that common. So just because
Correct.
something's simple doesn't mean that people do it that often. Or and probably the sad thing is they don't necessarily value it. And
Yeah.
that's an interesting thing. So the change thing, I can get the link is because I do lots on change as well, and this whole sort of about getting people to buy in is helping people to come to decisions for themselves, taking them on a journey. Yeah, I'm assuming that that's going to be some of it, but you can tell us more. So you've gone from let's kind of take coaching back for the masses. That's
Yeah.
not just some sort of ivory tower leadership
Yeah.
only skill, because your book is very clearly about managers and how we can make managers better. Do you want to tell us a little bit about how it fits into people manager? Because I think that's so relevant for my audience. A lot of the time they will have people who maybe not very skilled managers, maybe
Yeah.
people who've had no development or training. So perhaps we can get some practical tips as to how, HR professionals listening to this out this here can maybe point them at your book and the top tips.
Absolutely. So having worked in coaching culture now for a number of years and speaking to lots and lots of organizations with coaching culture, we managed to set up a community, got to speak to so many fabulous people in organizations of all sizes, all shapes and sizes. And it made us realize that actually building a coaching culture isn't just, it's not just about I've created what I call a capability triangle. And at the very top of the triangle, there's, executive coaches, those who've spent hours and hours on their own CPD, getting the professional accreditations, getting their stripes and their badges and their continuous coaching hours. Then you've got the internal accreditations, people who are practicing coaching internally, often in HR, but not always, but often in HR. But the magic happens when leaders and managers who are managing their teams and having conversations every single day. That's where the magic happens, when they have some level of coaching capability. And while ever we use the word simple before, it's, if you want to be at the top of the triangle, that is not simple, but actually some level of basic communication skills for leaders and managers to be able to know how to build trust, rapport, create accountability in others, set goals, build high performance, give and receive feedback, care for their people, show empathy. All of that should be basic, essential people skills. And within the book is really interesting because the book it's kind of got a bullseye target market, but then there's more and more people who are benefit on the back of the book. So the people who are currently buying the book are for board level, so working on how to build their cultural strategy into the organizational strategy, and that features within the book. As well as I've had some bulk orders for manager and leadership development programs, because there's examples of disappointing management in this book. I call it toe curling stories. But for every toe curling story, there's a heartwarming case study attached to it. So it's not just this is all awful. There's some really, good examples of bad examples of management. But then there's this is how it should have been done. This is what should be happening. This is what people want in their careers and their managers and leaders now. This is how it should be done. So while ever the title's a cheeky and deliberately provocative one, somebody actually described the book to me recently as a love letter to humanity, because actually building a coaching culture is a positive culture to work within, is a culture where people are developed, people are comfortable with each other, they're happy to give each other and receive feedback. Leaders and managers are knowing that it's about the people and this is what we need to do to help them to thrive. And that does not mean it is all soft and fluffy and all those words that make me cringe. This is still about building performance, but it's through building trust. And when people want to work with you and for you, high performance will follow. Whereas at the minute, I seem to be hearing a lot of people really struggling at the minute. There's more and more people in crisis mode, in burnout. Everybody seems to be focusing on high productivity, squashing people, so tightly, and they don't have any more to give. The world is going crazy around us, and people are absorbing that and going to work with that in their minds. And they've got a lot of worries. and they can't just leave them at the door, even though they're trying to and pretending to. So actually caring for your people and listening with empathy gets the job done more. Obviously, you've still got to train people and show them how to do things, but asking people questions and listening, what are they thinking and feeling, is where a coaching culture will develop. And I give examples in the book of organizations that are either on that journey or who feel that they've got there. And while it's a never-ending journey, is it culture never stops, we never have a flag and just say, there, we're done now. But where people feel that actually they've gone from good to great because of things that they've put in place.
So if we go back then to your triangle, which I thought was you get your kind of exec coaching, and I know what they do in exec coaching, so we've both done coaching qualifications, and you sit down and you say, what do you want to work on, what and you use the GROW model or equivalent and go through the process, and that's kind of like a coaching session, and to a certain extent internal coaches might do similar. And it's almost making it an event, maybe a coaching event for argument's sake. So when you're talking here about managers, what we want them to do specifically, and I get it's building trust and it's relationship. What is the skill, or what are you talking about that you want managers to be doing, and we would then recognize that that's kind of going on the right way to a coaching culture?
Making coaching part of the everyday conversations. Now, it doesn't mean every conversation is a coaching conversation, but stopping to think, actually, rather than me just diving into telling somebody the answer and getting it off my desk and moving on, actually taking the time to pause, listen to others. Because often if you're wanting to change somebody's behavior, you need to get them bought into what that means and what it looks like. So actually start to get them to think for themselves, and empower them and trust them to do the job. And people will more often than not surprise you at how great they are once you start giving them that level of trust and capability to go and do great things. Whereas if you're just telling them all the time and criticizing them and pulling them up for things they've done wrong, they're just not going to do the best work.
What do you think stops managers from doing that currently?
I have a thing, I probably won't remember them all now. I have a talk that I do called Why Your Managers Aren't Coaching and What You Can Do About It, which is absolutely to your question. And I have 8 myths that I like to bust, but now I've got to think of 8, I'll probably forget some of them. But that a lot of people complain about time. It's that usual time thing, whereas, my view is we've all got the same 24 hours. It's how we fill them and use them. And actually, it does take time up front to learn your own coaching skills and develop your own skills. And it does take time up front to coach people. But once you start getting into that positive habit, it becomes a virtuous cycle of the more your people are growing because they're being coached, the more you grow as well. I always say there are no downsides to building coaching skills or a coaching culture. The other things that people think it's not my job, it's for HR to do. You go and do my job for me. And that one makes my head spin round, because it absolutely isn't the job of HR to do the role of the manager. But equally, HR have got a role in teaching and training managers what their role actually is. So they shouldn't be enabling managers to give them their people to coach. They should be enabling their managers to coach their teams. So that's another one. Another one is where people think coaching is just for poor performance. That's not true either. So they shy away from it, or they think it's a bad thing. I often say coaching is for all performance. It's good to great. It takes people, it moves performance upwards. So let's stop thinking of coaching in a certain way. And I need to, I'm on a mission to sort of kind of bust some of these myths, of which there are many more, but why managers aren't coaching.
It's certainly one of the things, we had a conversation before we came on air, didn't we? About challenges for managers, and certainly when I think back to when I was in an internal OD role, and we used to look at why wouldn't people manage, and I think one of the challenges was it's along that time of I haven't got the time, but it's more along the lines of I don't want to make the time because I don't think it's important enough. So the people management time that you needed to invest wasn't seen as valuable as people with a day job. And I see that particularly in player managers, if you like. So someone who's just got a couple of people that reports into them. So they're also an individual contributor. They've got to also deliver on their own job, and they've got a coach on the side. They've got certain people to manage on the side, and it feels like a bit of an add-on, a bit of an extra hassle, as opposed to, you know, part of their job fully is to coach and develop their people. So I feel there's a mindset challenge sometimes for people.
So I often say, so whenever people would come to me about a coaching program or anything like that, I would say we have to start with the mindset. You can't just give people the skills, because to be honest, skills are, you know, we can go and learn our own things, we can research, but to be able to act like a coach, you've got to be able to think like a coach, is often what I say. And all I would be pleading with organizations is that they allow their leaders and managers and give them the time and skills to adopt a coach approach more of the time. Not saying go and get your professional qualifications here, there, and everywhere. That's a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time, but actually give them some level of capability that raises their awareness on what good coaching at that level is. They don't need to go into deep psychology, but at least being able to recognize what it is, that it's not mentoring, that it's not telling everybody, and actually to recognize that more and more people in employment are wanting this now. They expect it. And if we don't get it right, those organizations are going to lose out. You know, we've already seen so many people leave jobs, you know, throughout the pandemic, post-pandemic. You know, for me, it's a way to not just future-proof the organization, but to current-proof the organization. And it's, to me, it's, I feel, Lucinda, like I'm on some sort of mission, and I keep saying to people, joking, but I don't think I am joking. I say I'm going to have on my gravestone one day. It's gonna be binary. It's either going to say, "Didn't she do well?" or, "Well, she died trying." And at the minute, it's not going to be somewhere in the middle. So at the minute, I'm hoping for that. You know, I just feel that there's a ripple of organizations now really starting to wake up to this is essential. And you and I talked again before we went on air, talking about you wouldn't give your car keys to somebody who'd not passed the driving test, but we're happily giving the keys to somebody's career, to somebody who has not been given any skills to be a people manager, or B, they don't even really want it. They just see it as a way up to get more money.
I know that's one I used to feel that we should have people management amnesty almost to let people out of it. If you haven't got the people gene, i.e. you inherently don't want to do it and you want to go and code or be an engineer, whatever it is, then do that. You know, think about sales, the people sort of profession. The worst sales managers were actually the best salespeople, because they were quite, you know, single-minded, and it's about them. But so just for clarity, because I know what my answer would be, but let's see whether your answer would be. So when we're talking about managers coaching, are we basically saying that they would ask a question before telling the answer? Is that, you know, they would, rather than automatically going into tell or direct mode, they would ask and listen, help the person think of it themselves? Or would you define it differently to that?
No, I would define it as that, absolutely. But I also think it's situational. So we've got situational leadership. I think we've got situational coaching. You know, I often say to people, you wouldn't coach somebody out of a burning house. You don't want to sit there and ask questions while, you know, the house is burning around you. So actually it's in the right situation. And also with the right person, you've got to know what coaching is, but when to coach. So if somebody's brand new in role, and I experienced this many years ago, I was brand new in a brand new role, and I sat there waiting for my manager to help me shape my objectives. And I didn't really know the role. I had to go and develop new skills in it. And he said to me, and I could still see it in my mind now, what do you think your objectives should be? And in my head, I was like, well, I don't know. I genuinely do not know.
Yeah.
No amount of thinking would have drawn that answer out of my head. I needed some level of development and direction.
What's important? What's my job? Who are my stakeholders? Yeah, you need information to do that.
I needed some level of direction, and over time, once I got clear on the role, then coach me all day long, because, you know, I didn't need him sort of giving me all that direction. So I absolutely think it's, and another story here. I used to have a team, and there was 8 people in the team, and 7 of them have gone on to do great things, because I used to say to them, do you want me to coach you, or do you want me to tell you? So I positioned it, coach me, coach me, coach me. one of those people used to say, just tell me. Just tell me. So I literally would, because that was what they wanted.
Yeah.
And that person is in a similar level role to what they were and that's fine, because
That's what they
he's
wanted.
happy with that.
That's their choice.
Totally. And that's totally fine. But I actually used to ask permission. Do you want me to coach you? Do you want me to tell you? And it became part of my vocabulary in the team, and it was expected. And they'd be like, sometimes it would be like, actually, you know
Just tell
what?
me
I
on
just want you to
station.
tell me.
Yeah.
Just tell me.
Because it's
Fine, I
quicker.
will.
It is quicker, right? Isn't it?
It is quicker. Absolutely. But then it'd be like, oh, coach me. So, and then they'd come to the answer themselves. And do you know what? I think I could see the magic. I could see the magic, and they could too. Those
I
people
like that.
who
That's almost
really,
like, do you want me to tell you, or do you want me to coach you? That's a nice engaging way of
yeah,
and also signposting it to people as a skill, because they will presumably, you said they've gone on in their careers, but it wouldn't surprise me if they also have that as part of their communication kit bag, because you modeled that for them.
totally, absolutely, absolutely. And it's really interesting. I think signposting is an interesting one, because I think people come off, and there's a story in the book. One of my old managers many years ago, fresh off the back of a leadership development course, but hadn't told me, so zero signposting. And I actually call it in the book, How Not to Have a Coaching Conversation. He started asking me all these questions about a meeting we'd just been in. How did I think it had gone? What would I do differently? And my instant inner imposter went through the roof. I was like, oh my word, I was thinking of all the things I'd done wrong. You know, I felt terrible. And I was like, even in the book, I thought, we'd not even got to the car. And within 5 minutes, my inner imposter was gone through the stratosphere. And actually, once he decided to come out of that mode, he sort of went, I think it went really well. It's like, why didn't you just tell me that? Why didn't you just tell me that?
Start with that, and then let's say what we could do even better. Absolutely. Yeah. Love it. So let's focus in on, you've got seven principles in your book that we're going to talk about, which are takeaways, I guess, for our audience. Clearly they can get the book and read it for themselves, but can we run through those, get a bit of a taste of what they are and what you recommend?
So it's seven. So I call it 7 steps to a coaching culture. And while ever that sounds extremely perfectly linear, we know that it's not. But obviously, for the purpose of the 7 steps, while we're here now, and I'll talk you through each step. I'll share what the steps are first, and then I'll go back to them. So the first one is visualize. So visualizing what you want. Second one is strategize. The third one is engage. Fourth, which means obviously win hearts and minds. Fourth one is grow, so grow capability. Fifth one is thrive, which is unlocking feedback. Sixth one is perform, where you're really starting to perform. Your coaching is becoming part of everyday conversations, and you're using the great technology to, like that you've got, to be able to actually really start capturing what the conversations you've learned along the way. And then the last step is sustain. So in other words, go back around it all again when you've got new people. Don't think this is a journey that you've just finished on and you've got the flag out at the end. You know, you've got to keep continuing through this loop.
Right.
As soon as new people come in the business, new ideas will come, things will change. So visualize being, ideally getting the most senior team together to visualize part of the future. What do we want the culture of our organization to be? And you and I know that culture has been talked about more than ever. You know, it was used to be on the side of the desk or not spoken about at all. Now it's integral to the organizational strategy. You know, and I go as far in the book as to say, you know, actually is the culture is the strategy that achieves the business strategy, not the other way around. So don't put a business strategy in and forget your culture. It's the culture that will help you achieve your business strategy or not.
Or undermine
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. So visualize, get the right people in the room, think about this. Strategize is obviously start putting the plan together of how you're going to get there, putting the right resources in place. Where are you now? Where do you need to be? What's the gap? How are you going to fill it? Engage.
And this is in relation to people's skills, is it? We're thinking, because I mean, you know, it could be about any strategy, but is this particularly to do with coaching culture? You would be thinking
this is about build. Yeah, so this is the 7 steps to it. So it's purely focused on building a coaching culture. The skills bit comes in on step 4.
Got you.
So step 3 is engage, winning hearts and minds. So the step that you and I in change know that is the step that's often missed out. So actually spend that time engaging people. As we said earlier, people don't just change when you tell them to. So actually win those hearts and minds. So people don't just get an invite in there inbox saying you're coming on a coaching course, and they go, what for? Why? I have no idea what you're on about. Oh, here I am. So actually win hearts and minds, let people know what the vision of the business. This is all very linear. I do say people do start at different steps, by the way, but this is the book and the framework.
Yeah.
Next step is grow capability. Identify what your capability is in the business, who you want to focus on to build the capability, and work out what capability levels they need. And thrive is then about building on their coaching capability to start being able to give and receive feedback. I think when people are starting to feel comfortable, they've built trust, they're starting to build relationships better, they're communicating better, they can start giving and receiving feedback. So actually diving, giving feedback when you either haven't got a safe culture, people are not used to it, it becomes quite scary. So start focusing on feedback, and that's really when you're starting to motor. And then the next level is perform. This is where you are being bold and ripping up the annual appraisal, and you're having everyday conversations. This is about continuous improvement. This is where you're really starting to build. And then, like I said, the last step is literally sustain. So actually, this is just how we do things around here now. Some organizations start at step one, and obviously it's a much longer burn. Some start at the likes of capability. So let's go and give people pockets of skills here and there, but you'll only get pockets of results. Nonetheless, it's a good start, because if you start getting those pockets of evidence, you can then go back to step one and start presenting that evidence to the board. And all along throughout the book, there's case studies of how it's done and organizations that have done it in this way as well.
So I think you say start at the beginning and go all the way through. That's what you would want to do. Otherwise, to get a more sustained results, basically.
Yeah, that's the longer burn. If somebody's there going, you know what, I'm happy to invest time in this, because it does take time. That's the other problem, is people think this is going to happen. Oh, you know, we'll be done in a year. No, depends obviously on the size of the organization, but these things take time to change a whole organization, the way the culture is. But to get people recognizing what good looks like and what is expected, and not just what is expected, what is not expected and what is not tolerated, I think is vital.
So I agree in terms of that. The points that you make there, we could go into each of them in more detail, but we haven't got time to do that, and people can go and read it for themselves. I suppose the objection, I suppose, that I imagine people might come up with, I'd be really interested in how could we overcome that, is it's one of those things you can tell people to go and have a coaching conversation. I mean, the adage of, you know, ditch the appraisal, let's talk year round. We've all heard it, but it's easier said than done. So how do you actually get people to change their behavior when you have got managers? I mean, we talked earlier about mindset, so I'm answering some of my own question here, but you've got managers who feel too busy to do it. Or also, how do you measure whether the managers have actually changed their communication style on a day-to-day basis? That sort of practicalities of it, because it's easy, frankly, to talk. I mean, I can think about loads of managers back in the day who, I gave him some coaching, would be I was like, yeah, that really sounds like it was a coach. You know, I told him exactly what to do, but they've just inserted that told him what to do with I coached them. So how can you ensure that behavior change is happening?
So I think behavior change is linked to motivation. I think it's selling the benefits of why this matters. People want to know what's in it for them, don't they? How's it going to benefit me? Otherwise, let me know, you know, I haven't got the time, I'm not bothered. I actually sell the benefits and prove it. And that's why I say some organizations start further down the framework and start getting that pockets of evidence and then go back with that evidence. So for me, it's about selling the benefits, you know, letting people internally do the talking, let them share, let them show what's different in them as a human being, whether, you know, whatever their results may be, and let other people see the difference. So I think that is really powerful. There was something going in my mind then to tell you, and then I forgot.
Well, we can come back. Maybe it'll come back, because that's an interesting idea, though, if we stuck with that point that you just made. So you might almost get little pockets. I don't like pilot, but you might have little pockets of people doing it, so it sort of grows organically. Is that what you're suggesting? People see the difference?
I know what I was going to tell you, and that is what I was going to tell you, because I was going to share what the title of the book was originally going to be until I got told it was a rubbish title. The Art of Receiving Feedback. It was going to be called Start Small, comma, Go Everywhere, 7 Steps to a Coaching Culture, because that does what it says on the tin, but it would have sat on the shelf with all the other cultural books. So I decided to go a bit more punchy than that. But fundamentally, that message comes throughout. Start small, go where the energy is, go where the sunshine is, and start building there and building there. And it's the ripple effect of transformation. Absolutely. It's that, rather than, you know, big. I mean, you can still go big bang, but you still got to have your coaching champions throughout, your coaching, I call them the coaching ninjas, you know, who are helping in the organization, and role modeling at all levels. I think that's really, really important. I think when you know, you hear that I've got horror stories in the book, you know, people turning up to courses saying, oh, I believe we're building a coaching culture. Are we? Yeah, we are. How do you know? Because my boss has been reading some questions from a book in our one-to-one. You know, it's like, no. How many more books should I write on these stories, I think?
So you are kind of
small.
you're kind of going in a pull effect effectively to start with. You're finding the people who've already got that aptitude, and it's a bit, I think, the same in terms of managing change. You want people who want to be change agents, who've got passion for it, who will model it, start with, and then almost create, like you say, the ripples, but you create a tide ultimately where it swings, and it takes time, as you say.
It does take time. And then you asked me before about measures. For me, I think it depends what organizational metrics you're using, but the people metrics should be improving. Feedback on individuals or teams, and the performance, the results in those areas where coaching is more prevalent, those results should be coming through. So I think the measures are there in the organization. And again, examples in the book of organizations where managers were having conversations, they just weren't good enough. And, you know, no disrespect to the managers, they didn't know any different. Actually, they were given the skills. And then an organization that I'm thinking of saying, coaching has become the air that we breathe, and their engagement results have improved, and other metrics have improved. Coaching is the air that we breathe, but it wasn't. And that started in 2019. And where are we now? That conversation happened with, you know, in 2023, maybe early 2023.
And it would take a while for an engagement score to change as well, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
About the right time for that to happen. So it's a long burn, but what you're therefore doing is culture change, which is going to take a lot of changing back. So it is a longer term improvement.
And I often hear, Lucinda, that people talk about they want a culture of this, they want a culture of that, and they use words like innovation or belonging, or, you know, I say, don't be frightened of the C word, meaning coaching. Coaching, for me, coaching is communication, it's collaboration, it's curiosity, it's creativity, it's many other C's. It's challenge, it's change. Coaching underpins it all. To me, coaching is a red thread. In fact, I've just come off a call earlier today with a fabulous organisation who are insisting that everybody who has got people management responsibility in their business will be going through some level of coaching skills to develop, and to then follow up with bite-sized sessions on performance, on goal setting, on accountability, to let them see how it covers all of the things, how it includes all the topics that they're probably thinking, how do I have that conversation? All of it is underpinned by this red thread.
Brilliant. So one final question in terms of this, I suppose, and this is more of a philosophical question, because we alluded to this earlier in terms of we've both been in organisations a few more years ago than we like to admit. Would you say that overall coaching is a more common, a more prevalent skill used in the workplace now compared to 20 years ago, or is it still a long way to go? I'm sure it's not where we want it to be, but would you say it's developed the norm?
So I think it has, but I think we're still a long way to go to where I would love it to be. But I remember when I was a new line manager, and that really was 30 years ago, I had no idea about what people skills were, and I had a team, quite a large team of people, and it was only through my own personal trial and error of being a new line manager that I recognized actually asking questions, because I didn't have the answers, and I genuinely didn't. asking questions of my team who knew more than me, got out way better results than I could have ever given them. So, and then over time, it took me a long time to realize it was coaching, and actually the skills were this, and that, but it was trial and error rather than any fancy management or leadership development program. I think it's a lot more prevalent, but I still think we've got a long, long way to go.
Yes.
Oh, we do. We really do.
I'm going to be careful not to maybe reinforce that style, maybe the management style or leadership style that was kind of held up there was much more directive. You talk about command and control, didn't you, sort of 25, 30 years, that's sort of, and that is exactly the opposite of coaching. So evolving more to this empowering coaching culture generally.
Lucinda, just one point. One of the posts I shared on LinkedIn, and as you well know, that's where I kind of hang out all the time. I shared an article from the Fortune magazine, and it was a company in America had replaced all their managers with coaches. And the post it blew up in a great way. And it was basically saying, and I'm like, whoa, that feels like a step too far. But actually, fundamentally, that's really what we're saying. If coaching skills are required more and more, then we don't need all this management, because if people know what their role is, we need people to be empowered, to have their potential unlocked, to really grow. And I often talk to people when I'm sharing what coaching is. I ask them to share words that they think of when they think of coaching. Never ever do I hear a negative word come back to me, ever, apart from maybe time consuming. That might be the only one that people have a whinge about.
Or someone just tell me the bloody answer. What do you think? Give me your opinion, not what do you think. But that's more counselling, isn't it? Yeah. How do you feel?
Yeah, exactly. That's in the How Not to Have a Coaching Conversation in my book. So actually that could be where organizations end up. You know, you're hearing more and more organizations of self-managing teams. Actually, the only way that they'll be able to do that is through have real clarity and being able to unlock each other's potential through great questions. So I'm definitely on this mission, as I know a lot of other people are, to really, you know, if one coaching qualification could change my life through identifying my own limiting beliefs, then actually better conversations can help change other people's roles and careers.
Absolutely, and make them more fulfilling. And let's face it, where there's so many things going on with people feeling like they're burning out or otherwise you need to be able to stop and think and listen and connect with that person very much, as opposed to just kind of tell them to get on with it. Direct them. The interesting point that you made there, just I suppose to wrap up, just to loop it back, you talked about a red thread, didn't you? Is that the same as a gold thread? Because I talk about a gold thread to do with strategy. Is it linking to strategy, or is a red thread something totally different?
No, for me, it's probably the very same thing. I've probably just changed the colour.
It's a thread. It's a thread, whatever colour.
It's the thing that connects it all. I don't know why I said red.
I just think that's so important as well, because some businesses don't share the vision or where it is that they're trying to go. And if people don't have, and you mentioned the word clarity, don't have clarity about where we're trying to go, then so the clarity, all those things need to be in existence, and then people can be coached to get there, because they can make decisions because they know where where the business is aimed. But if they're in a sort of murky grey area, then it's very hard, almost going back to your original position when you went to your first job. If you don't have any information or clarity, how are you supposed to know what the priorities are? So those sort of things need to be in place around this to make it effective. But then let's trust people and give them tools to run.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Jo, if people want to, I know you're on LinkedIn, so they can look you up on LInkedIn. Yes. We did have a chat, we had a giggle earlier. There's one or two Jo Wrights, so I don't know if there's an easy way to discover coaching culture.
Jo Wright Coach. I'm the coach. I've bagged the coach name on LinkedIn.
Excellent. And they can get hold of you through there, can't they? And email you, etc.
Absolutely. And I've also got my own website, jowright.com. And although there's another lady who's got .com.au, not AO, AU.
Oh, that's
so she's in Australia. And I'm like, I quite fancy that. But no, I'm .com and I'm sat in England. Yes. And obviously through coaching culture as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the HR Uprising podcast. It's been a pleasure to chat to you.
Thank you too.
I really hope you found this week's episode useful and enjoyable. If you did, perhaps you could recommend us to a friend or colleague, or give us a review on your platform of choice. It really helps new listeners to find us. Now, you can access links to any of the information mentioned in this show via the website www.hruprising.com. Further free resources are also available at www.actus.co.uk. There you can also find out more about our software and training solutions. Finally, why not join our LinkedIn group, the HR Uprising, to share ideas and collaborate with other like-minded people professionals. Thank you for listening to the HR Uprising podcast.